Hey, what's up, guys, and welcome to Gamescript. Today, I'm taking a look with spread at the Monday night game, Seattle Seahawks versus the Detroit Lions. They're playing in Detroit, and it's a game where Seattle has a ton of defensive injuries that should impact the way that we build our DraftKings Showdown lineups. We'll get into it right after this. What's up, guys? Simon Edwards at Pumacom with Heat Seeker Sports. You're watching Gamescript, taking a look at the Seattle Seahawks versus the Detroit Lions. We got a 46.5 point total with Seattle as 4.5 point dogs in this one. I'm joined today by Spread Astaire. Spread, what's going on, man? How was your weekend, and how are you looking for tonight?
Man, it was another fun weekend of NFL football. That's why we wait all summer for it to arrive. And the surprises continue to abound. This is not a breakdown, and I can't wait to see tonight's matchup. The Seattle Seahawks look fantastic, but nobody would argue they've faced the easiest schedule so far in the NFL. So now they get their first real test of the season. You know, there's two arguments here. You can only beat who's in front of you, or that, hey, they've been padding their stats against some inferior competition. So tonight we find out for sure how legitimate the Seahawks really are. And the Detroit Lions, you know, they need this win as well to keep pace in that high-paced NFC North with the Vikings. I don't want to say coming out of nowhere because I expected them to be good, but I know a lot of quality handicappers did not expect them to be good. And I know their regular season win total did not reflect them to be good. So we all thought it was going to be a race between the Lions and the Packers there. The Vikings have this current streak of dominance, so the Lions can't afford to fall behind. So both teams will be looking to make a statement tonight, and I can't wait to dive in and see all the different ways we can approach trying to bet this game.
Yeah, for sure. And, just adding to those Lions, like Jared Goff has been struggling a little bit this year. The team, they've been able to pull out some wins, but this is going to be an interesting test for them. We got a game where Seattle is dealing with a bunch of injuries to their defensive line, and they could be exploitable by Detroit and what Detroit wants to do in general when they play these games. Make sure to hit that like button. We're looking for about 30 likes to put out a shorter video later on. I'm going to try to put out a 2-game slate later and another showdown for the second game, or actually the first game of the slate. So make sure to hit that like button. I'm also going to be looking to hit 1,000 subscribers. I'm at 950 right now. So help me out and get that extra 50 subscribers. And right now, let's get into Spread's idea of the overall picture of tonight's game. Spread, what do you think with these injuries that you see on Seattle's side, and maybe the way that these teams like to attack? What do you think is going to happen for the way that this game plays out tonight?
Yeah, this is going to be an excellent, I don't want to say referendum, but an opportunity for Mike Macdonald to really show, right? He's gotten so much credit so far as a defensive coordinator, but he's really going to have his feet put to the fire tonight as he's going to be trying to be using a bunch of backups there on the defensive line against one of the strongest offensive lines in football. However, the offensive line of the Detroit Lions is not 100%. And they lost center Frank Ragnow. And we know that the center, especially with a guy like Jared Goff, is probably calling at least half of those signals for changing the protections. He's the real leader there. So that's going to be a big loss to them, not only with his play, but not having his mind out there on the field to help Goff set the different protections. And we know that Mike Macdonald is one of the most innovative when it comes to disguising his coverages and disguising his blitzes. So while we are going to talk about this decimated Seattle defensive line, it's not like this is a 100% line for the Lions as well. I look at the New Orleans Saints as a team whose offense completely cratered when they lost their center. and they look, they're the best offense in football for the first 2 weeks. They lose their center 3 plays in week 3, and they've been completely pedestrian since then. Now, I know this is a fantasy show, and we do cater to mostly a fantasy audience, but don't overlook these centers. In the betting world and setting these lines, the lines of scrimmage is so important. So we're going to see how that affects it, and I don't think there's anything for sure. Although I do think that, because of the injuries to Seattle, it is safe to say that, hey, the Lions are going to be able to run the ball. But this is not like the Atlanta Falcons and the New Orleans Saints, where we know who's going to get a majority of the work, Simon. So even if we go off the assumption that, yes, Detroit and this awesome offensive line with these 2 great tackles that they have are going to be able to run the ball, who do we target in the captain spot? Montgomery's been the more effective one so far. But we saw last year, right, as the season continues, Jahmyr Gibbs continues to get more and more work. Montgomery is that bowling ball, the workhorse that they can count on, but Gibbs has a little more burst, a little more explosiveness. So I'm not sure who we want to put in the captain, and I think we're going to have to build. That's the great thing about doing these showdowns, right? I think we're going to build some builds that have both of them on there. So I wouldn't mind exploring a way to start there. However, I do think because of the way the betting has gone, I'm seeing money move a lot towards Detroit. It seems like a lot of people like Detroit to win. I'd also like to explore some Seahawks builds because I think the Seahawks are going to be able to cover the spread. And I think because of their weak schedule, they've kind of been overlooked here as a true team that's got a great chance to win the NFC West.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right there, Spread, and I kind of like where you're leaning there or talking about Seattle, because as much as that defense on Seattle, that defensive weakness is going to enable Detroit to run the ball more. I think Seattle has a really good matchup in the passing game against Detroit, because the secondary of Detroit's been pretty weak, and they've been especially weak in the slot, and that's where JSN, runs the most of his routes. But they're also have been pretty weak, like in the perimeter. And we got DK Metcalf that we're talking about. So we're talking about some potent offensive weapons. And as much as, like Seattle would love to run the ball against Detroit, like Detroit's got one of the top run defenses in the league. So they could be forced to exploit that Detroit secondary, which benefits them. But like at the same time, they don't necessarily want to turn this into a shootout. But I don't think that they're really going to have a choice but to try to do that.
Yeah. So how do we want to do this? Do you want to start? I like to build these lineups just while we're talking this through. Yeah. Do we want to start with the Detroit build, and then we'll knock a couple of those out, and then we're going to move to I think what is going to be more of my favorite build, and that's the I want to build some Seattle scripts, because I do think there's a good chance they win, and I also think there'll be a better chance of us being unique with those Seattle builds.
Yeah, I think you're right on that. I think we should build a Detroit one first. Let me get an idea of the optimal. Why don't you talk through your potential thinking on a captain if we do a Detroit build?
Well, I think we should make both, but right now, right, if you only were going to single bullet this, I would go David Montgomery for 2 reasons. Number one, he's been more consistent this season. Number 2, he's a little cheaper. And I think it's 50-50 here, right, Simon? I mean, would you be surprised if this went either way? So that allows me to save a little money. Him and the captain's only 12.9. It's not like we took the top guy. So I have 37.1 left with him in that captain slot. So where would we go from here if we want to take this approach?
Well, if we wanted to go with Montgomery and the captain, I think it means that, they've been able to exploit that defensive line, obviously, and they've been taking advantage of it. If Jahmyr Gibbs is less involved, I think that Detroit is playing with a lead, and on the Seattle side, maybe they're struggling a little bit to keep the pace, or maybe they're trying to run the ball and they're not succeeding in it while they're trying to run out clock. So on the Detroit side, if I went with Montgomery, if I'm going with a receiver, I think that Amon-Ra St. Brown might be the best option on the Detroit side. I think he's just got the best the best matchup. He's not having to face those perimeter corners, or I assume he wouldn't, right? Spread, like, or do they travel with the top receiver? Would they travel into the slot, do you think?
That's a good question. What's the young man's name?
We got Woolen.
Tariq Woolen, right?
Woolen.
You
Yeah.
know, he's the highest rated cornerback by PFF so far this season.
Wow. Yeah.
So I know we've given some credit to some other players, but so far, you know, we talked about Sauce Gardner, Stingley down there on the Texans, but Woolen has been the top corner. However, as I wrote this morning, I actually wrote this game up for Nuke the House right before we jumped on, Simon. I think that Seattle can spread the ball around. They have 3 legitimate options, and they're going to take what the defense gives them. I think that Detroit is more reliant on St. Brown. So I say we go ahead and throw him in there. That's at 11-2. Now we use half our salary, however. We're going to have to be looking for some deals here to be able to make this one work. So where do we want to go from here? I mean, do we want to throw Goff in here?
I don't think I want Goff in this lineup. I think that Goff is going to continue to struggle, especially with elite secondary. If I was going to put a quarterback in this lineup, it would be Geno. But I think, like, first we can look more towards saving some money. And we've seen how Detroit has defended slot defenders recently. We targeted Cooper Kupp in that first game of the season. Specifically because Matthew Stafford's offensive line was going to be decimated, but we stumbled onto something with Detroit's secondary kind of being vulnerable to these slot receivers because they had the same difficulties in week 2 with Godwin. So I think I want to go with Jaxon Smith Njigba at 6,600. He seems like a steal to me, but what do you think there, Spread?
Yeah, I mean, he's been good so far. They've talked about how basically they are going to just go to whoever's open. They're not going to force it to someone. And it seems to me that it would not be implausible that JSN gets all the work tonight. His role has continued to improve, and he's talked about being so much happier under offensive coordinator Ryan Grubb, who's given him more to do than the simple routes that Shane Waldron had him running last season. Yeah,
I agree with that. And so I think if we go next, if you want to go with a quarterback, Geno Smith is where I would lean. I think he's just he's playing better this year. He's had a lot of success in Ford Field in the past. These games between this specific Detroit team and Seattle, even though Seattle's got a brand new coaching staff, they've shot out. Like we're looking at a 37-31 score in 2023. Like these teams have played each other for the last 2 years. So we have a recent sample that, like, in 2022, it was 48-45. Both of those Geno was starting in. So they were both played in Detroit as well. So I don't know how these games keep falling into Detroit, but we have like a 2-game recent sample size to kind of go off of with at least the Detroit defensive coordinator or pieces of the defense there. So Geno has had success in Detroit against this team. And I just like, the way that Geno's looked this year better than Goff in general. But what do you think there, Spread?
Yeah, let's go for some Geno. We are, and that's where I think, right, this isn't fantasy baseball where the results directly correlate with who wins the game. A lot of times in fantasy football, we want to target the quarterback on the team we expect to lose. So this is a Detroit build. Montgomery gets out there. They're building the lead on the ground. St. Brown's having some big pickups here, and they're playing from behind because this weakened defensive line can't get stops here, right? And this build and this script that we are going for, Detroit gets out to that lead. They're up by 2 scores in the second half, and Geno's facing an easier defense moving down the field. We have 10K left here, Simon. So this is where the real skills come in. Who else are we looking at? Do we want a defense? Do we want a kicker? Or are we going to just try and grab one of these players not too well known a Khalif Raymond, a Tim Patrick, a Laviska Shenault, or a Bobo. Are we going to go someone like that? Or do we want to do the kicker, tight end, Noah Fant, who had 6 targets last game? So at his price tag of $4,400, a good chance to pay off. Of course, they're inside as well. And we've seen at this point, a 35-yard field goal in my brain is now a 50-yard field goal. It feels like a 50-yard field goal is almost automatic. You need to get up to like 58 or 60 before it becomes a coin flip. So when we're indoors in a dome, we have to look at both kickers here. How do we want to fill this lineup out?
So if I was looking at the kickers, like my thinking would be that Detroit would have more trouble scoring touchdowns if like the passing game is taken out and they're relying more on the run game. But at the same time, I don't think Detroit really trusts their kicker. Like there's been like a lot of talk about this kicker. Like just I don't think they really trust him. And I know that Campbell likes to go for it on 4th a lot. I think I would lean more towards Myers if I was going with a kicker. What do you think there, Spread?
I agree. Let's go for that.
Okay. And, like, despite what I say about Bates and the Detroit kicker, if you're watching the show, that could always like prove wrong. Like Bates could easily score like 4 field goals tonight. Like you never know what's going to happen. But I think probability wise, I think Myers probably would have a better shot of scoring multiple field goals just based on the going for it on 4th and the aggressive style of the coaching on Detroit's side.
All right, so let's throw the Seattle kicker in there. Leaves us with 5,300. I'm going Noah Fant here. I know we can't give out the whole lineup, but so the options: Noah Fant or a defense in my mind. If you're going with this build,
yeah. The one thing I'd say about Fant is Detroit's been pretty good against tight ends this year. Like limiting them to 5 DraftKings points a game. So if you were in this situation, like Fant has been doing well. Let's look at who Detroit has played the last few weeks so we can get an idea of the tight ends that they faced. Detroit has faced Arizona, so they they had a good tight end there. They faced Tampa Bay, which Kate Otten is hit or miss. And week 1 they faced the Rams, who really don't rely on their tight end too much. So Arizona is really the only tight end that they faced. And I believe he got hurt probably mid-game in that one, Spread?
Trey McBride?
Yes. McBride. Yeah, left with a concussion or something. So Detroit, don't be, I'd leave Fant in your player pool, but I think I'd probably lean on a defense in this spot more. And I'd probably would lean the Lions, I guess, Spread, just since we have Montgomery. You want that correlation in there. What do you think?
Yeah. You want to do the Lions defense? Since this is the Lions win?
Yeah, Lions D would make sense.
I mean, it's not implausible that Geno has some turnovers, right? I mean, he's not he hasn't been the most reliable quarterback throughout his career. And that's probably the reason that the Seahawks, even though their record is so good, people aren't necessarily buying into it yet.
Yeah. Yep. I mean, and this is a lineup too. You could do double kicker if you think it's going to be, like one of those games that plays it closer, and you want to put Bates in there anyways, even with the aggressive coaching styles and stuff. But I mean, at least you have options, like at least when you're left with this much salary on the table, we got a nice build here. We got a lot of studs in there. We got our quarterback. We got our slot receiver. If you wanted to switch Amon-Ra out with Metcalf or something like that, and that leaves you with 5,900. You could go Lockett, give a second receiver to Geno there, or actually no, we got 2 receivers with him. Yeah. I mean,
you can go Lockett, but then you have to go a little lower on your last spot here.
Yeah. So I mean, There's definitely options there. Let's see. Maybe if what if we swapped out Smith and Njigba in this lineup since we got DK in there. If we swapped him out for LaPorta, I was thinking LaPorta because
LaPorta's been quiet all year. I wouldn't be
Yeah.
surprised to see him finally get a breakout here.
Exactly, and
especially because there's not a lot of tape of him doing well, so they might not be necessarily keen on him, thinking that he's already kind of phased himself out of the game.
Yeah, on top of that, spreads Seattle's allowing the 5th most catches to the tight end position in the league. So LaPorta, like, keep him on your radar tonight, guys, because this is going to be a potential for his breakout game, especially if Goff's under a little bit of pressure with Ragnow out and he needs to get rid of the ball quickly. I think he relies on Amon-Ra and LaPorta the most.
How about this? This is great. So we have all these options here. Once you clear that out, and with that knowledge in hand, let's build a LaPorta captain, and then we'll switch to our Seattle builds.
Yeah, I like that.
Okay, so LaPorta's in here. He's only 10-8 at captain. This is fantastic. So I got 39-2 left here. In this one, do we maybe want to explore some Jared Goff?
We could do that.
Let's do that. So let's explore some Jared Goff here. Of course, I mean, this is going to be tough, but which running back do we want?
I'm going to go with, I think I'm sticking with Montgomery in general tonight, just because Seattle's been good against, defending the passing work of running backs. So,
okay. So we go LaPorta, Goff, Montgomery. How are we going to run this back with 21-2 left?
So if I'm running it back, I think if this is happening,
Lockett and see where we end up. Geno Lockett leaves you with 66. That's kind of fun.
Where's Lockett at? Lockett's super cheap. Lockett's been getting like a 15% target rate. That's my only concern with Lockett, but he is super cheap at 5,600, especially relative to where we've seen him like historically. But that leaves us with Smith and Njigba, so I don't mind that at all.
Okay, great. I am down for that.
I mean, in this build, we're thinking that Lockett takes advantage of the perimeter instead of Metcalf in this one, and Smith and Jigba's racking up all that slot work.
I mean, Simon, from watching the games, if you got extra points for first downs on third down, Lockett would be one of the most valuable players in fantasy football because he's not getting that many targets, but it feels like he's getting targeted on every third down, and he's getting the third downs when the Seahawks need it. So it's one of the funny ones where there's a difference between watching the games and the pure fantasy production, because while Lockett's not putting up huge numbers, if you watch, it feels like every one of his catches is crucial to the Seattle success.
Yeah, for sure. Like, so I like this build. I like using these cheaper captains in games like this too, because it's going to open us up for, like so many other players. And there's so many like options for these quarterbacks in a game like this that, like anybody could be captain. It doesn't matter if LaPorta's, like hasn't done anything this year. Tight ends in general have struggled this year. I don't know if like spread. What do you think is behind that? Do you think it's just fluky, or do you think it's the way that teams are scheming up their defenses this year?
I think it's scheme because last year he was able to put up a lot of numbers before other teams were really keen on him. And now they know this is a crucial component to the Lions offense. He's clearly the number 2 target ahead of Jameson Williams. However, with the extra attention he's getting, that's been an opportunity for Williams. Williams is also an interesting player, and we should also consider him and talk about him tonight. He's definitely a boomer bust type guy, but hey, there is some gambling involved, and we are, gamblers at heart. And I feel that Jameson Williams is the true gamble. He's sitting down at the blackjack table. He's letting that roulette wheel spin here because he's either going to break the slate, or we could get 5 of the other ones right and end up with either a min cash or absolutely nothing because JMO does. So I think he's really the hardest player to accurately project. I don't think, I think some of these other guys are pretty safe. Like, for example, I know a lot of people use the sites. They give you projections. I think that Geno Smith is going to be fairly accurate, right? probably a delta of 5 points either way on his projection. Same with Jared Goff, same with David Montgomery, same with Amon-Ra St. Brown. Jameson Williams could either be 15 points above his projections or a complete goose egg. So I don't know. What are your thoughts on him? Are you fine leaving him out and just saying if he beats me, he beats me? Or do you think we need to get some exposure to him? Because you know me, I'm building multiple lineups while we're talking this through right now.
Yeah, just to illustrate what Spread said, look at, we got like a 27-point game. We got a 1.2-point game.
Yeah.
And, you know, like it really, I don't like his matchup against these corners. I think he's got the worst matchup on the slate. But, you know, like the Spread said, all it takes is for him to break off like one pass. And it really depends on his ownership, like how you want to game theory, you know, like how you want to play it with Jameson. I can take a look real quick to get an idea of, you know, what his ownership projection is. If you give me a second here.
Yeah, let's go ahead and do that.
All right.
All right. While you do that, yeah, I mean, Jameson Williams is, to me, is going to be key to this Detroit Lions offense for the season, because I do believe that they are too Amon-Ra focused. And while St. Brown is good, we've seen in the new NFL with the number of teams that have multiple options, that is the key. And I know it makes it tougher for fantasy players. But you look at an offense like Tampa Bay with either Godwin or Evans with the potential to go off. The defensive coordinators can't simply key on one player at his tendencies. Jameson Williams is going to need to become that extra threat that defensive coordinators have to worry about if St. Brown and LaPorta are going to have good seasons. So I do think he has the talent to do that. He was an interesting guy we talked about in best ball during the summer because we thought he had all the talent in the world. But for the guys that he was being drafted around, he had nowhere near the statistical production. So I don't want to say make or break year, because I think that even if his season isn't that good this year, he's going to have another opportunity next season. But he's definitely the wild card when it comes to this Detroit Lions offense. Did you find what his ownership projection is?
Yeah, we're looking at about 35% total ownership. So that's, you know, like that's probably a little higher. If he was in the 20% range, I'd be much more comfortable taking a risk on him. But at 35% ownership, I don't think you're getting enough leverage to make it worth it. Especially with Jaxon Smith Njigba, he's only at about 40%. So you're only getting a 5% discount from Jaxon Smith Njigba's ownership, who I think has a much better matchup and a much better opportunity to put up PPR points in this game tonight.
All right.
As far as a captain ownership, he's about 8% versus 7% for Njigba. And I think the way that, you know, like Seattle's going to have to play, you know, like they're going to want to try to keep on the field their offense as much as possible to prevent that defense from going on the field. And I think that benefits Jaxon Smith Njigba because they're going to want to dink and dunk a lot tonight, I think. And, you know, like that is where I think, you know, he's going to rack up just a bunch of targets and a bunch of receptions. Like, look at this game against New England: 16 targets, 12 receptions. I wouldn't be surprised if we see double-digit targets for Njigba in this game. What do you think, Spread?
Yeah, JSN's been a player that I've been high on all year. When you look at his ability to get open, he's got the same skills as Garrett Wilson and Nico Collins and these top receivers. I know he really felt hamstring under Shane Waldron last year. He's been very complimentary of the new scheme and the amount of opportunities getting to show his full route tree. And tonight might be another opportunity for him to show the nation how good he really is, because after all the fanfare that he got coming out of college, it feels like he's fallen a little bit under the wayside. And it is tough because he came into a situation like Marvin Harrison comes in and he's obviously the top target right off the bat, right? Gets an ability to showcase his skills because really, you know, he's the best option by far. Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf are both all pro worthy, and you can't ignore them. So he's had to fight for targets a little bit more, but I know that they want to get him involved, and I know he has the talent to show why he should be involved when he does get those opportunities.
Yeah, and you know, like just thinking about that situation with the run game. You know, like in Detroit, just to illustrate to you guys, like Detroit is allowing 9 DraftKings points a game to the running back position. This is a team that picked up DJ Reader after being one of the most successful run defenses last season as well. And they improved their run defense, and they're allowing under double-digit points. Like they're about the best run defense that you can face. And I think no matter what, like Seattle wants to do with the run game, we're looking at Charbonnet, we're looking at Kenneth Walker, who's hurt, and Charbonnet, like who's good, passable, but he's not going to exploit like a top ranked run defense. So they're going to be forced to pass the ball and, like abandon any hopes of running the ball, because they're just not going to, I don't think that they're going to have any success with it.
Yeah, and that's going to be pretty much the key to the game. I'm high on Charbonnet, and when we build our Seahawks build, that's a player that I do want to target. But as much as I do like Charbonnet, we have to admit that this team is better with Kenneth Walker back there. I think that Charbonnet is an above-average back, but Kenneth Walker could be a top-5 back if he could ever stay healthy. Continues to have injury concerns. But boy, if he can stay healthy, that's going to mean a lot to the Seahawks' chances to win that NFC West.
Yeah. What are the odds on the Seahawks winning that division spread? Are they
okay?
Credible?
So they were plus 350 last week, and I think after all the injuries, they're down to plus 190. Especially with the Cardinals kind of coming back to earth.
Yeah.
They look great in that win over the Rams. And they were at 6-1, and I wanted that. And now it looks like the Seahawks have a great opportunity, but we'll see. I mean, obviously, if the Seahawks get blown out tonight, that could even up the odds a little bit. And the 49ers, are now returning to form here with George Kittle coming back. They look really good in their win over the Patriots. Caveat, it is the Patriots. However, to win a game like that, no sweat, I think does make a statement to the rest of the league. Don't count us out yet.
Right. Yeah, I would keep an eye on the line for Seattle, especially if they lose this game. If they lose this game because they're missing their entire defensive line, like spread, you probably wouldn't put too much of a dent on their ranking, would you?
For the Seattle Seahawks?
Yeah.
No, I mean, we've seen with these good coaches, a lot of times, they are getting more out of the players than maybe their Madden rankings or their PFF rating would suggest. And so that's why you invest in a coach like McDonald, which is why all the people running numbers gave Seattle a big upgrade with the addition of McDonald running the brand new offense. I think that Pete Carroll was great, but I think it was the right time to make the move. And now we see it with McDonald kind of bringing in some new innovative things that other offensive coordinators haven't seen. How does the term go? The sum is better than the parts. What I'm trying to say is he's making an average group look above average.
Gotcha. Okay. So spread. So we built this LaPorta lineup. Let's start getting into our Seattle builds, and I'll let you go first. Like what direction?
We talked about JSN. He's the obvious starting point here. So we got him in here at 99, and now each one we get more and more money, right, Simon? Because now we have 40K to fill it out. If we do that, I think we do pair him with Geno. That's a nice little Seahawks stack to start. Who do we run it back with? I say we figure that out, and then we can fill the lineup in.
I think as far as running it back, I think we can. We've saved enough money. I think we can be safer floor and put St. Brown in there, because I do think that St. Brown is going to get the most targets with the perimeter situation that we spoke about earlier.
All right. So we go St. Brown next. Obviously, that's going to cost us a lot of money. Now we only have 19.9 for our last three spots. I assume since this is a Seahawk victory, maybe we throw in a little Charbonnet.
We could do that. Like let's try that.
When are we going to find out the official Kenneth Walker deal? Because I feel like if he's in, we got to change our lineups a little bit.
Walker does not carry an injury designation into Monday's contest against the Lions, so I think he's in.
Then let's switch that out with Walker.
Yeah. Okay. You want to put Walker in? Okay.
I mean, if he's playing, he's the guy I want.
Okay.
And he's only a little more expensive, so. All right, now we have 11.5 for our last two spots, so we're going to have to be creative. How do we want to approach this?
So I would probably go with LaPorta. LaPorta is my next guy to see where that takes me. If we put him in there, that leaves us with 4,300. That gives you an idea. Like you got the defenses, and you got Khalif Raymond, Tim Patrick, guys like that. But if you wanted to go cheaper than LaPorta, which direction would you want to go spread?
All right, looking for some value here.
You could go Lockett and give him that second receiver.
Yeah, let's do that.
Okay.
So you go to Lockett. Now you got 5,900 left.
I think I'd go Myers.
Fant or defense to finish that one off.
Let's see. Oh yeah, Fant or defense. I probably so if we went with another Seattle guy, the only issue is we're going with a 5-1 Seattle build.
I don't mind that. Do you? Yeah. I mean, it feels like we're going to have to get different.
Right.
And I mean, we already have our Detroit builds, right? It's not like we're doing a single bullet here. If it was a single bullet, I might advise against it. But we're trying to look at ways to separate ourselves from the field. And I don't think there's going to be too many 5-1 Seattles. Right. Although I don't expect a blowout. If it was that case, right? I mean, obviously, even if you're only building 2 or 3 lineups, maybe take this one with a grain of salt and go with the 4-2 spread. But if you're building 10 or more, you need to have this 5-1 in your arsenal.
Spread. I remember putting doing one of these shows last year too, and putting Smith Njigba in the captain, and he hit. Were you on that show?
I don't think I was.
I can't remember. Like, yeah,
I don't think I was. Because I think I would remember that because he's a player that I really like, and he was a player that I targeted in best ball last year and was fairly disappointed. And I went back to the well this season, especially with Lockett carrying that injury designation. Yeah. During the whole offseason, we weren't even sure if he was going to be able to contribute. So I would have remembered that.
You know, because it's funny because before you mentioned that you wanted to go with Smith Njigba in the captain as your direction, like Smith Njigba is the guy that I've been building with in the captain. So I'm like, he's probably my favorite play on the slate just because he's so cheap, and he's to me he's under-owned in captain. But that's what I love about like what he's done so far this year. 3 targets last week and 2 targets in week 1 is going to be a turnoff to people. But I just think that they're going to need to target him tonight. Like he's going to get, I think, at least 10 targets tonight.
Yeah. So,
so spread. Let me. Did you want to finish this one up? Let's take.
Well, we can't do the 6th one technically. I mean, fortunately, I don't think we've ever really got popped for that because we've got close a couple times. But
let's see.
Yeah, I think that's a good place to go.
Okay. Cool. So let's. Let me clear this out because I wanted to show you a direction that I was kind of thinking of with Smith Njigba. Yeah, in that captain.
Okay, 99 to start.
So we got him in the captain, right? Now, I'm kind of playing like that Seattle's running backs are not going to have success tonight, right? That's kind of my reasoning for Smith Njigba. I'm thinking the running backs aren't having success, so they're having to throw to Smith Njigba. I want Geno in there because I think Geno's going to have some success, and I want Amon-Ra and I want Metcalf in there. That's going to leave us with 4,650 left per guy. If you wanted to go with Sam LaPorta and take advantage of that matchup on the like Detroit side, Detroit having that good matchup with them, you put him in, and you're left with 2,100. You could get a guy like Tim Patrick in. Who I think is like his snap count was. Let me check his snap count to see what if Tim Patrick's worth considering. He was a really good receiver. He got a 50% snap count last week, 39% the week 2. So his snap count is going up. He's only 1,600, right? I think Tim Patrick could be interesting. He was one of those super reliable guys on Denver. He just kept getting hurt, right?
Yeah. And I was surprised they let him go.
Yeah, because Denver loved him. Like Denver had him for years, and the last 2 years he was hurt in the preseason both years. And then this season they finally just cut bait on him. And Detroit made a really good pickup there. Detroit's smart with those pickups that they make. They pick up these guys that kind of fit under that moniker, that grit moniker that they have, right? That kind of fit in with the team's identity. And I think Tim Patrick's one of those guys that kind of fits in with that identity. And like 50% snap count last week. I wouldn't be surprised to see him getting worked in a little bit. One of the reasons I think that Goff has struggled this year is because they're missing Reynolds, and Reynolds was kind of like that Tim Patrick type of receiver who Goff kind of leaned on, like in certain spots and trusted and whatnot outside of his main group. And I wouldn't be surprised to see if Tim Patrick can eventually, kind of take on a like a role like that behind Jameson Williams and stuff like that,
All right. So if we put him in there, how does this build look now?
Gives us about 500 left. I think another thing that you could do, like if you don't want to put in, like maybe we take out LaPorta. What if we wanted to put in, if you want to work a lineup like this and put in Montgomery, who would you take out, do you think, spread? Like between like St. Brown and Metcalf?
St. Brown off the strength of Tariq Woolen.
Okay. So if we take out him and we put in Montgomery, I think we can put LaPorta in that situation. That leaves us with 4,700. So that leaves us with defenses and Fant if we want to go with Fant.
All right.
And Raymond,
are we going Seattle defense here? Are we a little worried about that?
I probably wouldn't.
I would go with a kicker over a defense again.
Yeah, if we could get a kicker in there, like we're a little short on funds to get a kicker in there. If we have LaPorta in there, I think
okay. So I didn't have Montgomery in my build. I was like, what do you mean? Okay, hold on.
Yeah.
Put Montgomery in there. No, yeah. Okay. Well, yeah. I think it's either Fant or a defense.
Yeah.
Which defense would you prefer?
I think in this build, I would probably go with the Lions D, because I think that, like if Geno's having to throw more, it's because the Lions are playing with a more comfortable lead. And if we got Montgomery in there, that'd give us that correlation with the defense. In this situation, like Metcalf has broken off a long touchdown. Smith Njigba is mainly getting a lot of PPR points. They're not necessarily scoring. They're just racking up a bunch of PPR. That explains Goff not being in there. I mean, actually, no, I take that back. Ignore that Goff comment because we got Geno in there.
Yeah.
But, like that, like this is them playing from behind basically. And, like it's mainly PPR for Smith Njigba and DK Metcalf maybe gets a long touchdown. But maybe that's like the only score that they have or one of the few scores that they have.
All right. Sounds like a plan.
Yeah. So, yeah. So, I mean, I think those are a couple directions that everybody can go, like with their lineups. Just when you watch these shows and just not our show, but just like any show in general, don't necessarily just take what lineups are being built and go with it. Like take the nuggets when people are talking through their lineup builds and like the matchups information and stuff like that. Because, like not everything that, like Spread and I lean on is gonna hit. But, like you guys can take some of the information that we're talking through and use that when you do your own lineup builds to help you guys out with, like with your, thinking through the game and whatnot.
Yeah, so this is fun, Simon, and I think that this is a great game tonight, not only for building lineups, but just as a information gathering part for both teams. We know that most of these good coaches, and they kind of screwed it up with that 17th game, right? But they divide the seasons up into quarter, right? So this is the end of the quarter for two teams here. The Detroit Lions are about doing as well as expected. I think the big surprise there is that the Minnesota Vikings are ahead of them. We assumed that it was going to be the Packers and the Lions vying for that top spot. So now a little more incentive for them to really push forward. But the Seahawks, really, I don't know, for a team that's 3-0, I think they have the least amount of belief in them. I think most people are chalking that up to an easy schedule. So they have a great chance to make a statement tonight. And I would not be surprised if they did. Just to review one more time, I did take the Seahawks plus the points, and I am on the under here. So that's why I prefer these Seahawks builds.
Yeah, and don't underestimate good coaching, because I know a lot of people don't really put too much into coaching, like or try to dismiss coaching. But like for me, like coaching is a huge part of a team's success, and Dan Campbell's a perfect example of that. The Minnesota coach, what was McConnell? I escaping my mind their spread. The coach of Minnesota is a perfect example, and
Kevin
you know,
O'Connell or
yeah,
Brian Flores?
O'Connell. Yeah. And then, of course, McDonald of the Seahawks is another good example of these young coaches that come in and they inspire their teams, and the teams like kind of turn things around, or in Seattle's case, continue their success. So, yeah, don't underestimate like a good coaching change.
Yeah, so it should be an exciting game. And Simon, are you building a showdown for the other game tonight? Is it's another night with 2 Monday Night Football games?
Yeah, I'm going to do another show with that spread. Do you have any thoughts on that game? Like, do you have
No,
any?
the reason I wanted to do this one is I felt stronger about this game tonight. With the other game, right, we have a brand new quarterback coming off the street, which shows that, boy, Miami really didn't plan ahead if they didn't have a backup quarterback plan in place, or
Shocking.
maybe they just overvalued Skylar Thompson. But the fact that they're signing a guy and they're bringing him in to run a rather complex offense, and it's not like he has experience with it. He had a lot of success under Greg Roman, but we know that's a way different style of offense that they run. So this is brand new. However, sometimes I think these guys overthink this. So maybe running a simplified playbook will actually help the team overall. They still do have an excellent opportunity, excellent weapons. And right, even I could scheme up a play to make Tyreek Hill score, right? Because he's so much faster than everyone else. So I actually have less strong feelings about that game, but I think it's just as intriguing as the one we just broke down.
It's amazing to me, like knowing like Tua's history with the concussions and everything, and his injury history, like why they wouldn't have taken care of this issue. Because we all look at the Dolphins, like coach in particular, as like one of the smarter coaches in the league. Like, how did they not account for this? Is what I want to know. How they still in a situation where we're a few years removed from the concussions, and like Skyler was the backup still. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Like Flacco, like was on the free agent market. They had some good, like veteran quarterbacks who could have been, probably pretty enticed to come to Miami. Like, and they just didn't pick anyone up. I don't get it, honestly.
Yeah, so that's going to be an interesting spot here tonight. I'll be having more entries in the contest we just did, though, Simon.
Yeah.
I'm fine kind of sitting on the sideline for this one, for the Miami game, that is.
Yeah, I have to do my my research on that game still. So I'm going to do that next. I've been at the vet this morning. I had an emergency with my
Is everything
with my
okay?
dog. Yeah, he's I got an old dachshund, and he was like screaming in pain with his back this morning, so I had to take him to an emergency vet to get checked out. But turns out he's got like a pinch in his neck, so I had to get him some pain medication. Now, if you're watching this show, like I had another old dachshund that had the same issue with his back. If you got a dachshund with back issues, take him to get laser treatments, because my old dachshund, like I thought like we were gonna have to put him down. Like he was just like in so much pain. He couldn't move. He couldn't bark without like just being in incredible pain. And he hated being in a crate, so he would be scratching all the time. Like so we had to take him. We had to think of something to do. Surgery wasn't an option. It was way too expensive. So we took him in to get laser treatments, just like you would with a chiropractor. And it was like a miracle. It was like overnight. Like my dog had zero pain in his back, and like it lasted for like a couple years, like before he ended up passing. But yeah, I mean, it was just like almost a miracle treatment. So if you got like a dog with back pain, just keep that in mind.
All right. Yeah, I'm having some issues, but I was able to avoid the vet, Simon.
Yeah.
I have a cat, and she's absolutely wild, and she has a sprained ankle, and she's limping around my house, but she still wants to spend all day outdoors.
Yeah.
Fortunately, it's getting better. So I'm just trying to get her to rest. But boy, I mean, she just does not want to do it. She keeps trying to sneak out behind me and stuff. I mean, it's just been so I understand the stress that comes along with having a sick pet.
Yeah, especially like when you have to make sure that they're not doing anything physical and they hate being in a crate. It's just it's just brutal.
Yeah.
But yeah, so all right, guys, hit that like button. Get me to 30 likes to put out a shorter video later on. Make sure to subscribe to the channel. I'm about 50 short of 1,000, so I appreciate all the subscribers recently. And thanks, guys. I will see you guys a little bit later on. And thanks again for joining me. Oh, Spread, where can they find you got a couple things coming up on Meg's station today, right?
Yeah, that's right. As soon as we are done, I'm going to be jumping on. It'll probably be done for you guys by the time you see this. But on fanspeak.com, we do what we call Overreaction Monday. And it's where I get to kind of lean into my inner Shannon Sharp and Skip Bayless and do crazy overreactive takes to what we saw yesterday.
Good stuff. All right, guys. Thanks for watching. Check out Spread over on Fanspeak, and I will see you later this afternoon.